think I've just found your next favourite American watch brand. I have two of the most interesting watches I've ever handled to show you here today. Two completely different styles, by the way, one military, one diver. Both feature incredible dials. The quality of both watches is fantastic for the price, and the dial material on the Field watch is something that will blow your mind. Hello there, my name's Kieran, welcome to Top Tier Ticker, I hope you're having a good day. Today we'll be taking a closer look at two brand new watches by American micro brand Praesidus. Both watches are incredibly interesting and definitely worth sticking around to hear more about. This isn't my first experience with Praesidus though. I reviewed their DD45 not too long back, a Dirty Dozen inspired field watch with a dial that was baked in UV radiation to achieve real patina. I was super impressed with how beautiful and quirky that watch was. And it turns out Praesidus only makes cool watches because we're back with another two today. I do get to keep the diver after this review, but the field watch is only on loan, and I will share things that I don't like about both watches throughout the video. And I really do feel that we've got a watch for everybody here today. Either you'll like the diver or like the field watch. I think more of you are going to love the field watch because of its style material, which is honestly mind-blowing. So because of the algorithm, I'll leave that one for last and we'll talk about the diver first. But make sure you do stick around because you definitely want to see more of this watch, trust me. So this is Praesidus' take on the dive watch. And I think it's fair to say they definitely haven't gone about things in a conventional way, because as you can see, we don't even have a dive time bezel on here. And we have much more of like a military dial design over the one that you typically see on a dive watch. And as you can see, the crown on this watch is another huge point of interest, and we will cover that in the video soon. Now, luckily, I've got to a point where I can be super selective with the watches that I review on the channel. I get offered a watch almost every day from different micro brands, so I can genuinely have my pick of the bunch with them. And this one immediately caught my attention just because of how beautiful the design of this model is. Praesidus is best known for creating field watches, so I suppose this is their hybrid field diver, which does feature elements from both styles of watches. Now, first of all, the dial design of this watch is pretty much out and out field watch. The biggest tell of that really being the sort of oversized Arabic numerals that you typically find on a field watch. Also, you don't typically see dive watches with syringe hands like this either, with this style of hands most closely being associated with military watches. But what makes this watch special for me, and what makes it such a standout, is that dial texture. Now, you do see a lot of watches with textured dials, and typically I'd say that they usually look better in like the pictures than they actually do in person. This one though actually looks better in person than it does on the pictures. Now, it has a 3D construction, so you get genuine shadows and high points within that dial construction. It's also got a fumé finish, so it's like a light blue in the center fade into a darker blue on the outer, but then it's also got a metallic finish to it, which adds another dimension too. I'd describe the texture of this as like a tree bark. It's a sort of texture that you'd expect to see on like a Grand Seiko, for example. And if there wasn't enough texture already, Praesidus decided to raise those numerals above the dial surface a tad, which does make them stand out against that heavily textured dial. I also appreciate the fact that there's minimal branding on this watch too, with just a Praesidus below the 12 and then a model name above the 6. It really does allow that beautiful dial to just take center stage. Now, I'm happy that Praesidus went with a blue lume here to match the dial. They don't tell us what type of lume it is on the website, but I assume it's BGW9 because of its color. Now, the lume here isn't as bright as most dive watches. Your average Seiko does outperform it, but it is definitely still good enough to use for everyday life, and let's be honest, you're probably not going to go diving with this watch. And when you look at the watch head on, you can't really tell, but there are numerals underneath the curvature of that glass. It does feature Arabic numerals at every 10-minute interval. However, that section is heavily distorted by the outer glass construction. Speaking of, we do have a sapphire crystal here. It features a boxed construction with a flat top, and you can see the blue anti-reflective treatment on the edge of the glass too. This crystal is beautiful. It's fabulously clear, and it's one of the better sapphire crystals I've experienced on a watch. Now, the case of this watch, well, it's nothing special. It's your standard 316L stainless steel, and I'm glad that they went with a completely brushed finish on this watch to really allow that dial to be the main focus. There is a little bit of detail with this bezel. It sort of features a stepped construction, which really does allow that crystal to sort of blend in with the case. Now, the silhouette of this watch is incredibly compact. If anything, I'd describe it as a little bit stubby, but that does mean that the watch wears incredibly well, and we'll discuss that very soon. It's also super refreshing to get a dive watch that isn't on an oyster style bracelet. Instead, we have this beautiful beads of rice bracelet with an even more beautiful clasp. It also features a nice taper from 20mm up at the lugs to just 16mm at the clasp. Yes, it would have been nice to see an on-the-fly adjustment, but you do get tons of micro adjustment here, which is the benefit of using this style of clasp. But this clasp is very good looking. You've got a little bit of high polish on the sides and then brushed in the center. Now, the only thing I don't really like design-wise about this watch are these end links. I just feel like they're a bit of an afterthought, you know? They're super long and they don't really match the style of the bracelet links. They seem to break up the two elements of the watch rather than combining them both together, if you know what I mean. I think this would have looked a lot better if these were negative end links instead of positive. Now, as mentioned, we do get some super compact dimensions here, so this watch is going to work for a lot of people. It's coming in with a 38mm case diameter. The lug to lug on this watch is just under 46mm, and then the thickness is 12.8mm. Now, a bit of that depth is because of this highly domed crystal, so it does wear a little bit better than 13mm, but this sort of thickness isn't really a problem anyway when you get in 200 meters of water resistance. And as mentioned, this watch is dive capable. I know some people will hate me calling it a diver because it doesn't have a bezel, but technically you could go diving with it. Now, that water resistance is down to this solid screw down case back. Now, technically the crown itself isn't screwed down because it features this cap which screws over the top of it. Now, as you can see, it features this hinge system where it sort of articulates to meet the crown. You can sort of have it sticking out like this, or you can fold it in on itself. Now, obviously this one is going to be the safer of the two. And then when you unscrew it, it reveals the actual crown of the watch, which you can then pull out to set the time. And that crown is operating the Soprod P024 movement. And this is a Swiss automatic movement that I'd say is on the more premium end when it comes to affordable watches. It has a high beat rate at 28,800 vibrations per hour with a 38-hour power reserve. I think a lot of enthusiasts would consider this movement sort of a step above the Miyota 9000 series because it's a lot quieter on wrist with that rotor. But unfortunately, this movement does feature a ghost date position. I know it's sad, and to be honest with you, I'd probably rather have a Miyota 9039 to avoid this ghost date, but I wanted to know your opinion. What would you rather have? A Swiss automatic with a ghost date position, or a Miyota 9039 with no date? Let me know what you'd prefer down in the comments. And that is one of the three problems I have with this watch. Ghost date position, ugly end links, and, well, pretty poor lume. That being said, I think that this is a dive watch for people who don't really like dive watches. If you don't like the design of a typical dive watch with the bezel, the hands, the indexes, then I think this is a good alternative. And I am super impressed with how much detail is on this dial. It's absolutely beautiful. And I also think it's a great looking case, and I love the look of this crown. Now, this watch comes in at $645 on the rubber strap, or on the bracelet like this, it's going to cost you $700. But make sure you sign up to the website newsletter and get yourself 10% off. It's going to give you a nice discount. Now, because of those end links, I would be tempted to maybe go with the rubber strap version and save yourself a bit of money, but it would be a shame because this bracelet and clasp is really nice. I suppose what I'm saying here is don't be afraid to go for the rubber strap option if you fancy it. It is a nice bracelet, but you're not missing out too much because of these end links, you know? But if you think that this watch is cool, wait until you see their new field watch. This thing is going to blow your socks off. Now, this watch is currently sold out on the website, but they'll be doing a third and final restock next month in October. So if you genuinely like this watch, you'll have to be quick because the first two batches sold out very quickly. This is the C47 D-Day. And what makes this watch so special is that it actually features a dial made from a metal taken from a fighter plane that actually flew during World War II. Yeah, I know, that's crazy. Now, this dial is made from aluminium, and that's something that we have seen before with watches, but have you ever seen a dial that's made from a material that's taken from a C-47 hamburger plane? Yes, this dial has been cut from a piece of metal that was used on the plane door. So because this is a piece of metal that was used for a different purpose, it does feature real patina. It features tons of scratches and imperfections amongst the surface, which I think is what gives this dial so much character. Now, what that means is that no two dials are exactly the same. As you can see, this particular one does feature this scratch right above the 5 o'clock, which again, some people might find annoying, but I think is just super cool because it makes your watch unique. Now, you have two options when you're buying this watch because obviously some pieces are sort of bit more beaten up than others. They have a low wear and tear option and then a high wear and tear option. Now, of course, this is the low wear and tear option because realistically this dial is incredibly clear, but some of the high wear and tear options I also think are super cool because you get a little bit of paint and just like a proper character to them, you know? Now, to give this dial some legibility, Praesidus have punched the numerals through that aluminium, which gives them a 3D texture and does make them pop against that aluminium dial. And to my American viewers, I'm saying aluminium, but I think you guys call it aluminum. And there are super luminova on these indexes and hands. Admittedly, there's not a lot of it, and I'm guessing that's because they didn't want to overwhelm the dial by just putting loads of paint on there. And let's be honest, you do want this dial to take center stage because it's the coolest part of the watch. Now, those hands have a sandblasted finish to them, which sort of matches the dial surface, and I think they've done that to avoid having too much contrast with the dial. Again, just to let that dial really punch through. Also, some of you might have noticed, no branding on this watch whatsoever. Again, just letting this dial speak for itself, which I appreciate. And you can also thank a portion of that down to them selecting this excellent crystal. This is a piece of sapphire. It does feature quite a heavy dome, and again, we do have some blue anti-reflective treatment on here. There is a little bit of distortion with the outer dial, but generally speaking, that dial just looks great from all angles. I also appreciate how the design of this watch is just mostly dial, and that's down to this incredibly basic silhouette that this case has. It is sort of your classic military watch silhouette where basic lugs and sort of a basic bezel, and the side profile is kind of as basic as it gets, but they've obviously gone minimal to make sure that the dial is the centerpiece. Matching the hands, we do have a sandblasted finish on the case, which is of course synonymous with this style of watch anyway, and the case back of this watch is screwed down and it features a memorial to the war. And true to military watches as well, we also have a large screw down crown, which is easy to grip, and that screw down crown and case back does give this watch 100 meters as well. Now thankfully there is no ghost date position on this watch. They've played it safe and they've gone with the reliable Miyota 9039, which I think is the movement that they probably should have used in here too. We maintain that high beat rate at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and it actually has a 3-hour better power reserve than the Soul Prod at 42 hours. Now in terms of wearability, this watch is super comfortable, partly down to just how comfortable this leather strap is. It's so soft, and it's definitely a vintage style strap because of the distressed leather and the stitching. My one complaint here though is that the strap, as usual, is absolutely massive and I'm on the smallest hole, so if you've got a wrist size below 6.5 inches, this strap isn't going to fit you. And I think we've got the perfect contemporary size for a field watch too. Again, this watch is coming in with a 38mm case diameter. The lug to lug is a hair under 45mm, and then the thickness is actually quite a surprising one. It's the same, it's 12.8mm. Now this one definitely doesn't look 12mm because of the silhouette of the case and how big that crystal is. I'd say it wears more like a 10 or maybe an 11 than a 13, but obviously that's just down to good design, you know. Overall, this watch is super comfy and I think it looks fantastic on wrist. Honestly, this watch is pretty flawless. The only thing I could think could be improved is maybe the handset. I think they border on just being a tad bit basic and maybe looking a little bit cheap, but I can see why they've used this handset to make the focus on the dial. And the lume again on this model isn't great. It could definitely do with being a bit better. Even if they just make the handset have really good lume, that would be better than sort of both being a little bit crap. But this is genuinely one of the coolest field watches that I've ever reviewed, and it makes you think, what are each of these scratches from? And that's why I'd actually be tempted to go with the high wear and tear option, because yes, it does look a little bit messier, but you've got so much character there, you know. Again, the final batch of these is launching next month in October, so if you are interested in these, then make sure you sign up to the notification list. And I think $550 for this watch honestly is a bit of a bargain, because not only are you getting an exceptional field watch, but you're also getting a piece of history under the glass. And by the way, how cool would this be as a 2-piece watch collection? God knows which one you're wearing as a dress watch, but I think it's fair to say that you'd be the coolest person in the room, whichever one you choose. So you'll find a link for both of these watches in the description. Go and check out some of the other colors that they make for these models too. But if you didn't already have a favorite American micro brand, let's be honest, I think you might have just found it. If you haven't already, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Bye for now.